listener production.
Hey, Tara Cassidy with you and welcome to The Briefing. In between the handshakes, speeches and dinners on his overseas tour, Anthony Albanese casually invited a Middle Eastern supermarket chain to set up shop in Australia. And while you've probably never heard of it, it could reap us rewards.
Big brands are charging more because they can. Competition is one of the solutions to bring that down. So this is one of the ways we can help people get a fairer price for their grocery basket.
That deep dive into whether LuLu Hypermarket can actually help lower your grocery bill and realistically take on Coles and Woolies is coming up in the second half of this episode. First though, let's get into the headlines with Chris Spyrou. It's Thursday, the 2nd of October.
Hey Tara, and to you listening. Police are being urged to completely scrap strip searches of young people after a landmark court ruling found systemic issues with the way it's being used. The New South Wales government is being lobbied by legal experts to make the move after the lead plaintiff in a major class action was awarded $93,000 in the Supreme Court earlier this week, the court finding she'd been subjected to a humiliating and egregious search. Rhea Meredith, who was 27 at the time, was asked by officers to remove her clothes, lift her breasts and remove her tampon at Splendour in the Grass back in 2018 after a police dog sniffed in her direction. The search found no drugs and nothing else illegal, with the court on Tuesday awarding her compensation and aggravated damages for assault, battery and false imprisonment.
The class action, which involves more than 3,000 people who were searched by New South Wales Police at music festivals between 2016 and 2022, has been described as the largest class action against police in Australian history, with legal experts saying it could pave the way for thousands more to be compensated and potentially costing the force millions of dollars in damages. Now, we did hear from New South Wales newly appointed top cop Mal Lanyon, who yesterday apologised to Rhea but defended the need for strip searches.
Strip searching is still a valid tool in the police arsenal, and the reason we do it, and a lot of focus is on drugs and people possessing drugs, but can I say one of the main reasons we strip search is for weapons.
We've also since heard from the New South Wales Greens, who are backing calls for strip searches to be banned on people under 18, as well as banning them and sniffer dogs from music festivals entirely.
Yeah, and look, it is worth noting in New South Wales, an officer can conduct strip searches, but only in these really strict circumstances of it being necessary, serious and urgent. So mere suspicion of a person having drugs on them is not enough. That's what we heard from the Supreme Court on Tuesday. If they do have that suspicion of drugs, then that's when they can use other powers like pat-downs. Now, look, this case isn't going anywhere. Obviously, we do have these calls, but we also know that Rhea will be paid additional damages at a later date, and the judge said that will happen after all those involved in the class action have had their payments settled.
Whistleblowers have spoken out about a top sunscreen testing company linked to a number of Australian brands that have had to pull their products from shelves for not meeting SPF ratings. Princeton Consumer Research has now been dropped by brands including Woolworths and the Cancer Council, which were among the 16 that were highlighted in a recent choice report for sunscreens not providing the labelled coverage. Now, speaking to the ABC, former PCR staff said they witnessed irresponsible testing practices, with some even resigning over their concerns about the integrity of its methods and cutting corners.
If you see data that's too good to be true and you see it dozens of times, it's probably too good to be true.
In one example, an employee said they were asked to point out which tests were receiving the product under review and which was getting the placebo for a study where the person evaluating it shouldn't have been told. And that is a serious breach of ethics and clinical practice. At least 15 brands in Australia use PCR for certification testing, with at least half on the choice list that fell short using that company. PCR has denied the allegations and pointed out that some of the whistleblower employees now work for a direct competitor. The Australian regulator, the Therapeutic Goods Administration, or TGA, has announced it's now investigating the allegations and reviewing whether it needs to bolster its monitoring measures.
The number of large companies paying no tax in Australia has hit its lowest level on record, with the ATO saying it's partially due to its crackdown on advisors coaching their clients on how to dodge the taxman. In its 11th annual corporate tax transparency report, it showed that of the more than 4,100 companies that lodged their returns for the 2023-24 financial year, 28% of them, or just over 1,100, paid no tax, which is is actually down from 36% when they started collecting this data 11 years ago, Chris.
Yeah, and it's the first time large companies paying no tax has dropped below that 30% mark, with the report saying these companies, which make $100 million or more a year, can pay no tax for a number of legitimate reasons, Tara, and those legitimate reasons include making an accounting loss, claiming tax offsets, or using tax losses from previous years. Now, we're yet to see which companies have made this year's no tax list, but in the past, it's been companies like Qantas and Virgin, where they've claimed ongoing COVID losses, Netflix Australia, who have claimed high operational costs, and Domino's, who have said in the past that they've been impacted by international expansion and inflation. So it'll be very, very interesting to see which companies make the list this year and their reasons.
The Geelong Football Club has apologised for the behaviour of its players during its Mad Monday end-of-season celebrations. Earlier this week, social media posts by midfielder Bailey Smith and captain Patrick Dangerfield were called out as being homophobic after they posed for a picture together and referenced the movie Brokeback Mountain, with the caption saying, "This is what losing a granny will do to ya." Meanwhile, 3 other players dressed up as Irish rap group Kneecap that recently had terror charges dropped for 2 members.
Yeah, and just a quick clarification. On Tuesday, we did say that Kneecap chanted death, death to the IDF during a performance. That was incorrect. That was a different artist. That was Bob Vylan. Rather, members of Kneecap were charged after one of them waved a Hezbollah flag, which is listed as a terrorist organisation in Britain. In a statement, the Geelong Football Club said it sincerely apologised for the offence caused following its end-of-season gathering on Monday, saying, quote, certain costumes and associated social media posts were inappropriate and a significant error of judgment. It says the club's post-season celebrations in future will be held in a different way and its players will be educated about the club and community expectations.
And James Tedesco has been crowned the NRL's best, winning his second Dally M medal, a whopping 22 votes ahead of runner-up Nathan Cleary last night, with the Roosters captain telling Fox he didn't even think it was his best year.
I don't feel like this is a breakout, standout year for me. It's just me doing my thing week in, week out. So, I'm grateful that I was able to play every game and lead this team and be at my best most weeks.
God, to be that good on an average year, Chris. Meanwhile, Broncos Tamika Upton became the NRLW's first player to win 2 Dally M's as well, which is just amazing. Now, while this was all very exciting for the sport enthusiasts out there, for others like yourself, Chris, there was apparently something else that graced our telly screens that caught your attention far more than the Dally M's, I hear.
Yes, I mean, congratulations to all the Dally M winners. It is a huge achievement, but I'm not sure if you've been watching the latest season of Dancing with the Stars in the US?
No, sorry.
Okay, well, we have Robert Irwin flying the Australian flag this year. And look, he's been all over my socials last night and this morning because of this exact moment. Yes, that is the crowd absolutely losing their minds when he tore his shirt off as part of the performance, and it even had the judges feeling some kind of way, saying, baby Bobby Irwin is all grown up. And Tara Cassidy, let me tell you, when that Bonds commercial came out, it sent the internet and this country into a tailspin, and now I just feel like Bobby Irwin is taking his top out and getting his rig out at a moment's notice, and I don't know how I feel about it.
Yeah, I think those Bond shoot photos actually stopped the internet, which, by the way, this and those shoots won't be the last of the Irwins that you're going to be seeing. Apparently, outside of Dancing with the Stars, the Irwins only just this week announced that they've actually landed a major deal for their own reality TV series, Robert, to be front and centre. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Kardashians, eat your heart out.
Yes, and look, if you haven't seen Robert on Dancing with the Stars, we'll pop a link to that in our broadcast channel on Instagram. Now, that brings our headlines to a close for today. Coming up next is my deep dive on Albo's invitation to a Middle Eastern supermarket chain to take on Woolies and Coles, and whether it actually could do just that. Stick around, that deep dive is coming up for you next. I'm going to start this deep dive with a line I wish I had written. He once described his opponents as deLuLu with no suLuLu.
deLuLu with no suLuLu.
But in LuLu, Anthony Albanese hopes he's found an answer to Australia's supermarket competition challenge. Full credit to Ben McKay from the Australian Associated Press there. Now, if you just heard a collection of sounds and not words, allow me to break it down for you. In case you missed it, Albo spent the last week and a half overseas. He was in New York for the UN General Assembly.
We all have a part to play, and Australia
just as we always have, will always play our part.
Spent a few days in the UK where he met with the King and rallied around the British PM.
What I see here in UK Labor, under this man, this leader, this Prime Minister, my friend, is an absolute resolve to stand together and defend democracy itself.
And before coming home, Pitt stopped in the United Arab Emirates where he, among some other things, invited a local hypermarket chain, LuLu, to set up shop in Australia.
We need more competition in the Australian supermarket sector.
So what do we know about the Middle Eastern chain, and can it shake up our supermarket sector in a way that will benefit you and me? Erin Turner is the CEO of the Consumer Policy Research Centre and she joins me now. Erin, welcome back to the briefing. What can you tell us about LuLu Hypermarket?
So LuLu Hypermarket it's a supermarket from the Middle East around Qatar. I know it because you can buy great Dubai chocolate there. I have a personal interest in this brand coming to Australia. But essentially, it's another option for you to buy groceries, to do your weekly shop at. And the Albanese government has specifically invited this company to consider Australia as a place to start up, to introduce more competition in our grocery sector.
So you mentioned there that it's about boosting competition. What's the theory and thinking behind this?
So we know from inquiry after inquiry after inquiry that Coles and Woolies dominate the supermarket sector. Most people are doing their shop with the big two. Quite often you go to the same one every time. You've got your route between work and home, you pop into the same one. And particularly in the last few years, grocery prices have been going up and up and up. The ACCC did a really big inquiry here and they found that there's a few factors behind this, international shipping, inflation, but there's also an underlying factor of big brands are charging more because they can. Competition is one of the solutions to bring that down. So this is one of the ways we can help people get a fairer price for their grocery basket by encouraging competitors to come in. We've got Aldi in some states and in some areas. We've got other independent supermarkets. But there's a theory that there's just not enough competitive pressure to keep those prices at a good level. I see no downsides to having another competitor. The challenge will be it's a solution that's really uneven. And you see this with Aldi, or for the few people who have this option, Lidl, some of the other international supermarkets that have come to Australia, they don't go everywhere. There's no Aldis in Tasmania. I live in a regional area. There's not guaranteed that you'll have an Aldi in your town or in your region. And so that competition, that competitive effect can be really uneven. It might mean that people in cities or in certain high-demand suburbs get that benefit really quickly, and that people who live in regional or remote or just less popular areas in Australia, they might not see that price benefit. And there's competition can impact small providers, but we tend to see that people shop with small providers for different reasons. A desire to support local farmers markets are a really good example of that. They're not quite in the same category as your Coles and Woolies. What we need is companies coming in and nipping at the heels of the big guys to get us all a better price.
You mentioned Aldi a little earlier, and Albo actually mentioned Aldi as well when he was talking about this invitation that he's extended in Abu Dhabi earlier this week. Aldi's been around for more than 2 decades in Australia, and the duopoly that Woolworths and Coles share is arguably stronger than ever. So just how good of an idea is it to bring in another foreign supermarket chain?
This isn't going to fix the whole problem. I think of it as one part of a really big solution. It's a good thing. It helps. And the government is prioritising some really interesting reforms alongside of that. Things like better unit pricing. This is so specific, but it's, again, one of those really specific, helpful things that make this better. You'll notice when you go shopping, the unit price is that thing that tells you, per 100 grams, this is what it actually costs, or per tea bag, or whatever the measure is for the right bit of groceries. Making that clearer, mandatory, and penalising companies when they don't do it really well, that helps you compare prices. Again, it's competitive pressure that overall makes it easier for us as consumers to shop and get better prices.
Something that I am curious to know is that obviously there are some hurdles that LuLu would have to jump through to enter the Australian market. So while we do have this invitation, we don't know what processes have already taken place and whether there are any processes that have been explored. But we have seen some challenges when foreign supermarkets have tried to enter Australia. And one of them has been land banking, which, is the strategic purchase of sites to prevent competitors setting up shop. We've seen in the past that Woolworths, Coles and Aldi have engaged in this sort of behaviour. What are some of the other hurdles that a company like LuLu would have to jump over or, deal with before entering the Australian market?
Yeah, there are really practical challenges. And again, it comes back to how dominant Coles and Woolies are. Part of it is, can you get a place to set up shop? Land banking is one of the reasons why companies have struggled to expand in Australia. Can you pay a fair price for a good retail place that's not already owned or dominated or even just softly influenced by Coles and Woolies? They have done things like buy spaces, not use them and not let the competitors in, which is that's bad for everyone except Coles and Woolies. The other thing is supply chain. Can you get access to, the cucumbers and pears and rocket and lettuce that you need? What we've heard from a lot of farmers and distributors is that Coles and Woolies have these quite aggressive and sometimes punitive terms with their suppliers. And it means they can't work with others. They can't shop around for a better price as farmers. They can't get their stuff to consumers as quickly or as well as they would like. And those terms and conditions can really impair a competitor coming in, but can also stop things like, smaller providers and players stepping up at a local level. So that's where our competition regulator, the ACCC, really needs to step in. They've got some powers where they can act on this, but the government's actually looking at increasing and improving powers so there's more penalties when companies engage in anti-competitive conduct, which is fantastic. Another one of those small solutions that add up to this big solution to this wicked problem.
Aside from inviting foreign competition or even shoring up the competition powers, what are some of the other levers that the government could be pulling in this space to essentially break up the powers that Coles and Woolies have over this market?
So there's two ways of thinking about it. It's kind of like two sides of a coin. One is competition. How do you make it easier for businesses to come in, get in and, just put the pressure on Coles and Woolies? So deal with land banking, more penalties for competition breaches, invite other companies to come on in. Love what the Albanese government is doing there. They're doing the right things. The other side is the consumer side. How do you make it easy for us as individuals to find good prices, to shop around, to get what we need, and to let us know when companies are taking advantage of us? One option that they're talking about is a shrinkflation notice, something you might see in the supermarket or you might have experienced before as you buy something thinking you're getting, a kilo of something, and it turns out they changed the packaging. You're only getting 750 grams and the rest is air.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really nasty trick. They're proposing that there's going to be a notice, like a big warning sign saying, hey, this product's recently experienced shrinkflation. And that alone, that shame factor, will either stop companies from doing it or help customers avoid it. And again, it all adds up. It's all the little solutions we need to deal with the big problem.
All right, so I'm hearing here that LuLu could be part of a wider, bigger, broader jigsaw puzzle that the government's really trying to piece together at the moment. Before we let you go, we did have you earlier on in the year to talk about Anthony Albanese's push towards buying Aussie-made and the government's $20 million investment into those efforts. Do you think inviting a foreign supermarket like LuLu and a chain like that to set up shop in Australia, is at odds with campaigns like that?
This is such a good question. It kind of depends on, what an individual wants to do. And it also depends on how a company like LuLu might run their business. If they're foreign owned, they'd be coming out here. Would they be employing Australian staff? Probably. And would they be selling Australian grown, produced items? They actually already sell a lot of Australian made and produced items. You can get Tim Tams in LuLu, which is great. Great for our Middle Eastern friends. They deserve Tim Tams. We deserve more Dubai chocolate. But yeah, one of those questions we need to figure out is, are they selling Australian cucumbers? Are they selling Australian pears? And what does this mean overall for the economy? I think given the big wicked problem of Coles and Woolies just being too big, too monstrous, impacting us in all sorts of ways, I think overall this is a net good thing. But yeah, lots of detail still to figure out here.
Erin Turner, thank you so much for joining us once again on The Briefing.
Anytime. Thanks for having me.
That was Erin Turner, CEO of the Consumer Policy Research Centre, speaking with me there. And that is it for this episode of The Briefing. If you enjoyed this episode, why not flick it to a mate? And while you're there, leave us a rate and a review. I'm Spyrou. Catch you next time.